All right, we're back.
Yep,
EDH
yep.
takes episode 5, the return. We're back in a new studio, new recording location
Living room.
in the living room.
Yeah.
We're upstairs now, and we've got new mics. So if there's any noticeable audio differences in the recording, please comment. Let us know. We're just trying something else out as opposed to the old snowball today.
Yeah.
So I'm Elijah Samuelson,
And I'm Spencer Cook.
and today we're talking about the Spirit of EDH.
Bit
and what that
spooky.
means, yeah. The Halloween special.
Exactly.
A little bit late.
In
but
March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so the Spirit of EDH is this common phrase that I feel like I've heard since I started consuming Commander content and started getting more into Commander. And we're not really totally sure what that means to everybody. There's this kind of idea of you use it to describe things that you like or don't like in a game of Commander. But we think there might be some harm in ascribing this Spirit of EDH to just anything that you like or dislike.
Yeah, and I mean the thing with the Spirit of EDH is like it doesn't really have like a hard and fast definition. I don't think that everyone can agree with. So like you said, Eli, people just kind of use it to mean, do what I like and don't do what I don't like, and that can be a little bit harmful, especially when players are for example, maybe a player only plays decks that combo kill the table or something, or like kill all players in one turn, and they use like that as a example of the Spirit of EDH, like saying that you trying to kill a player, and take them out of the game before other players is like against the Spirit of the EDH, and that can be a little bit shaming for other players that want to play the game a little bit differently than them. And it's a little bit arbitrary, right?
Yeah, I've got an anecdote. Shortly pre-pandemic last year, I would play at the local shop here in Fargo, and I was playing a game with a couple guys, and I was playing my new Perforos Bronze-Blooded deck. And in that deck, the strategy is put out big creatures and attack people. And how you do that in an aggro-based deck is you try and obviously usually knock out one person at a time, I think is usually the correct play, especially when you have somebody who is clearly dominating the game, as there was in that game. And I was kind of going in on this guy and trying to take him out. And he got upset with me about targeting him and trying to knock people out of the game one at a time because he didn't think that was, to quote, fun. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? And he said, well, when I try and win the game, I try and knock everyone out at the same time.
Yeah.
And not all decks or not even all color combinations necessarily have the ability to do that, especially outside of the use of combos.
And I think even if he didn't, explicitly invoke the Spirit of EDH as like a mechanism, I think maybe there's a little bit of implicit use of it. Like he's very much implying that, the way that you were playing, Eli, was kind of against the, the fun of the format or whatever. And that's a little bit, I don't want the Spirit of EDH to be used like as a tool for that,
Right. It felt to me in that moment like he was trying to infer that I was either in some way a bad person or I was trying to stop people from having fun.
Yeah, just because you're, playing the game a little bit differently in game style. But moving on from that, just to kind of start off with a little bit of structure, we should probably talk about what the Spirit of EDH means for, most people and what it means for us, right? Like, or how I would define it if I had to. So, as we said, before, the Spirit of EDH kind of can have a lot of definitions. And like we said in the beginning, it usually just boils down to, what I like is the Spirit of EDH and what I don't like is against the Spirit of EDH. What do you think, Eli, is like if you had to, you've consumed a lot of Commander content, right? So what would you say, if you had to like give a definition from what you perceive is like the Magic player base at whole's definition of it?
Well, I think the common thing that everyone likes to throw out but actually doesn't mean that much is the idea that, well, everyone understands Commander is a social format.
Yeah.
But also Commander is about fun.
Mm-hmm.
And fun, that's a great thing to say that it's about fun, but it's not a subjective thing. It's a very objective thing to define what is fun for people, and especially what's fun for 4 people playing a game together.
It's really hard to do that, right?
And that might be easy to come to an agreement on when you're playing with close friends or like people that you know very well.
Yeah.
But fun, like morality, it's kind of a hard thing to determine what is fun, what is unfun, what is right, what is wrong.
Yeah, and when you start going to places like once this pandemic ends, eventually you start going back to the local game store or Command Fest or whatever, you're gonna run into situations where people have vastly different opinions than you do.
But I think there's this idea that people like to think that EDH is kind of like this battle cruiser magic where interaction is frowned upon. Because I know a lot of Commander players do not enjoy being interacted with.
Yeah, they don't like counter spells or when they get their commander removed or something. And then they'll sometimes cite that as like, oh, if you're playing like, a deck with 20 counter spells, that's against the Spirit of EDH, which obviously it can be not fun to play against a bunch of counter spells, but I don't think you should use the Spirit of EDH as kind of like a way to express that, right?
Yeah, it's a weird thing because most people would see, oh, all my stuff gets countered. That is unfun, but there's people like us that see heavy interaction or a lot of interplay between players. That is more fun for us.
Yeah,
I don't enjoy games particularly where I just steamroll the table.
Mm-hmm.
That's not so much fun for me.
Yeah, and so I would say, to kind of tie this back around to the definition side of things, I don't like to define the Spirit of EDH because I don't really think it means much. But if I had to define it, I would say the Spirit of EDH needs to be something that all players, bar none, experience. So like not to exclude any player. So I don't think you can define that as like Battlecruiser Magic, like you said, because that kind of excludes like the kind of players, like for example, the portion of the player base that plays like CDH or something. You don't want to exclude them with a definition of the Spirit of EDH. So I think a definition that doesn't exclude anybody in the Commander format is to say that the Spirit of EDH is like the concept of, self-expression, like from a player's point of view.
Yeah, I think that's the one common factor that
all players, right?
Just about anyone can agree is something in the Commander format is this idea of self-expression,
mm-hmm.
whether it be your deck choice, your commander choice, what cards you're playing. This doesn't mean you have to do something like I'm building my theme deck based around cups in the artwork or something
no.
like that.
Or, women looking to the left.
That doesn't have to be your self-expression. I was talking to a friend earlier today about how, to me, my version of self-expression is the colors that I play. Like
mm-hmm.
I like to play a lot of red and white, and I feel like even if I'm playing a lot of the same cards in a lot of those decks, and maybe they're not the most unique choices, I feel like that's my sense of individuality because it's not a very common thing to see.
Yeah, and there's like self-expression that comes down to like, maybe I'm really interested in kind of making a creative combo line, or even just like playing it, very tight. Like that's a self-expression, a point of self-expression for sure.
Yeah, because I don't even think you can say somebody who totally net decks like some top tier like competitive deck and builds that. They're choosing a deck, and that's a form of expression, like that choice that they're making, because they could choose any variety deck. You can't. I don't know if you can necessarily say like what is the best deck in Commander.
No, probably not.
I don't know if like even CDH, like
there's a spectrum of it, right?
Like Commander isn't a very solvable format
mm-hmm.
like that. So there's even like little choices you can make for your meta within that deck list that you make.
We don't play CEDH, Eli or I, but like we're aware of it enough. So like even like the little like meta calls you make in like a CEDH format, like a group, is like yourself expressing your skill or your knowledge or just what you think is fun, right? Like CEDH decks could like potentially just play like a fun card in their deck. Like you could do that if you want to.
Yeah, I think there might be some members of the community, especially in the more casual circles, that could make the argument that CDH players don't have a sense of self-expression.
Yeah.
And I would argue against that 100%. I think they express themselves a lot.
Yeah, so people will sometimes cite the Spirit of EDH as like CDH is against the Spirit of EDH, and therefore like it's a different format because it's playing with like the goal to win instead of like to have fun. But yeah, I think if we define the Spirit of EDH along the lines of self-expression, like it encompasses all the players, which I think is good. I don't think you want to exclude any players of Commander because like then you're just kind of like asking for arguments and dumb shit.
Exactly.
Like that.
I think playing to win and playing for fun are not mutually exclusive.
I agree.
I think there's plenty of games that you can play, quote, to win and still have a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think I could argue there's CDH play groups that have a lot more fun than casual play groups.
Yeah.
They have a common
goal.
Goal, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the important thing. But moving back to, I guess, this idea of self-expression. Like there's, there people will say like, okay, I don't like this definition because like that just kind of like some people might be apprehensive against the idea of the self-expression definition because it encompasses some strategies they don't like. But the thing is, for every strategy that exists, there's going to be someone who doesn't like playing against that strategy, no matter how weird the strategy is or how kind of dumb it seems to be against that strategy. Like there's players that don't like Voltron, there's players that don't like counterspells, there's players that don't like cards from Ice Age. I don't know. Like, so I don't think it's really fair to just like you don't know, you can never know in like a group at like the LGS that you don't know if you're playing with. You can't know if you're not playing with a player that like hates, a token deck or discard deck or something.
Well, yeah, what's one of the most fair strategies you can think of in casual Commander? I would argue it's token decks.
Sure, token decks or like some general like mid-range, strategy
and
or something.
I guarantee you there is somebody who loses to their buddy's token deck all the time and is just like, "Oh man, I hate token decks. I hate seeing token decks."
Yeah. So
I can't do anything against them. All my spot removal is bad or something like that. Like there's or they're just losing to it. People don't like what they lose to generally.
Yeah. So my point with this is that like you're not gonna. I don't think there's any way to avoid that idea of someone out there is gonna dislike your strategy. So I think that you can't really use that as an argument against this concept, this definition that I've put forth. So I think Commander like content creators like Command Zone and like EDHTakes and all those people, right? They have kind of a responsibility not to not to ascribe moral value to certain strategies because it can kind of I'm not saying taint, but it can like affect the viewers as a whole's like perceptions on a strategy. Maybe that's not good. I think usually they do a pretty good job. Most content creators aren't like really negative, but like one thing that I nothing against Command Zone, but one thing that I always remember is that when the Command Zone was doing, they mentioned they had a podcast episode.
Their Jumpstart episode?
Yeah, their Jumpstart episode. And then they had like a long tirade about how Tiny Bones was so unfun. And I think Josh even said, like, if you come up to me with a Tiny Bones deck at a Command Zone, I won't play with you. I'll ask you to play a different deck.
Yeah, like at a GP or something.
Yeah, so that's like an example of like some players just don't like certain strategies. And I personally don't. I mean, it's not an episode about Tiny Bones, but I don't think it's like that oppressive. Like it's probably like a little bit annoying to get to discard your cards, but I think that's like a valid way to play the game and not that unfun.
Yeah, and I think how you feel playing against certain strategies like stacks or hand destruction, stuff like that, I think a lot of it is just based on feeling in the moment. Like it's hard for you to sometimes know if you'll absolutely hate something like a stacks deck like before playing against it, because everyone talks about how miserable stacks decks are.
Yeah, if I can just jump in for a second. I think that's exactly the problem. It's that, like I said, most content creators usually do a decent job at this, but I think they have that problem of kind of like tainting the well before the viewers like get a chance to drink from it. That's not a very good analogy.
No, I think I see what you mean.
Yeah, but so like I think a lot of players who have never played against a Tiny Bones deck now have this like really bad perception of a Tiny Bones deck before playing against it. It could be the case that they play against a Tiny Bones deck in the wild and like they actually have a good time and it's a fun game, but they're never going to do that because like, Command Zone it was pretty hard against it. And like I'm not trying to like harp on the Command Zone over too much, right? Because like everyone does this, like it's not like something you can avoid in entirety. I just want people to be more aware of the effect they have, I guess. So we're guilty of that sort of thing too.
Yeah, and I don't like the idea that somebody has this reputation of stacks decks as just playing like Winter Orb, Static Orb, Smokestacks, like every symmetrical stacks effect for no gain, and just slowing the game down and making it so you can take like no game actions, and then I might pull out my mono white Thalia deck against somebody who has some cards that are for the most part like one-sided and like very soft stacks effects, but not nearly as oppressive as like like a Winter Orb or something
like how
like
Thalia
that.
makes their non-basic lands under tap or
something.
something.
Some things that people would consider annoying and most people wouldn't enjoy playing against, but that I might get that reaction from somebody who hasn't played against an actual stacks deck as being like, oh, you're playing a stacks deck, oh my god,
yeah,
you're the worst.
So it's a little bit of a tricky situation because you can't like this goes back to how certain players will have apprehensions of certain strategies and you can't really stop that, right? Like, but you can at least try to be aware when you're touting those ideas that you're affecting people. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So coming back around to the idea of expressing yourself with these, like we mentioned before, you can express yourself in like deck building is one way you can express yourself, and some of the examples of this, just to kind of give some like actual concrete examples, is you can like play pet cards in your deck. You know, you can play like wacky combos, you can play like good combos, efficient cards. That's one thing I like to do to express myself, is I really like playing efficient cards that give me some sort of like either the like 1-mana removal spells, or like they give me like card advantage, like a Dark Confidant type cards. Those make me very happy, and I feel like that's expressing myself. You can play like, you know, stax, I guess, like you said, MLD. It's a little bit, you know, of a tricky, you know, thing, but like it is a form of expression. You know, burn, aggro, control, mid range. There, you know, just all the strategies you can play in deck building are ways of expressing your feelings or your desires in a game.
Yeah, and like you were saying, we like playing good cards, and that doesn't mean because we're playing cards that might be considered, for the most part, staple cards, or like people agree that they're good cards.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're not expressing yourself. Like the combination, you have a 100-card singleton deck. The combination of cards that you put together, I think, is a form of self-expression.
Yeah.
Even if they're all cards that people agree are good and playable.
Yeah, and like you mentioned earlier about how like even if you like net deck, you can still express yourself. That you know, that's like expressing yourself through a play style. So like in a game of Commander, like after deck building, you can still be expressing yourself. Like if let's say you go into a game and you're like, I really want to like play as like optimally as possible, like this game. That could be a form of expressing yourself. Maybe you want making deals, like politics, is a way of expressing yourself in a game. Like sometimes something I like to do when I play Commander often is I like to do like the plays where it's like a really like probably not even the best, like probably a bad play, but I like to just tap out and like just go for something and like put myself at risk to even die to the table. But it's kind of fun, right? Because maybe they choose not to kill me, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, I like to do that too. That high risk, high reward play where you're like, well, I know if everyone really wanted to, they could kill me, but if they don't, it's gonna be amazing.
Like an example of this is like I might like draw an overwhelming stampede and play it on turn 5 to do like 30 damage to one person or something, instead of saving it to win the game later. I might just like do that, attack with all my guys, have no blockers, and then just being like, boom, do something now, right? Instead of like saving it to win.
Because then that puts the choice on somebody else, and I feel like, to me, giving my opponents decision points like that is part of the fun of Commander. And like,
yeah.
And it's when I was reading through the philosophy document, it was mentioning something about interactivity between players is something that they like to encourage.
Yeah.
And I like those creating those dynamics in a game of Commander. That to me is also part of like the spirit of EDH, is finding ways to make players feel like they're contributing to the game.
Yeah. So like if I can do a big play that makes that's like me impacting the game, but it results in like me potentially dying, I'm okay doing that, because like I'm having my fun in the game and doing something cool, and maybe, you know, other players can have fun in killing me or something, right? That's fine.
Yeah, I've heard some people
depends on my if I want to win or not, right, at that point, but you know.
When we're making the claim that I think everyone likes to say they don't care if they win or lose a game of Commander, they just want to do their thing, whatever that might be. And I think that's a hard thing to pinpoint sometimes, because sometimes somebody's thing is winning the game, or like creating an infinite combo, or locking people out of the game. And in that situation, should you
be able to like should you complain if your opponent stop you from doing your thing, right? If that's the thing.
If that's your thing. But so that I don't think is a healthy way to measure whether or not you had fun within a game. I personally try and just like to affect the game somehow. That's what and you know, fun is, like we said, a subjective thing, and not everyone can feel the same about it. But I try and just value the games where I was able to affect the game. That's all I want out of it.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes I've played decks where my thing is knocking people out of the game, like aggroing them out, or like trying to control the board and stuff. So if somebody wants to try and take me out of that game for doing that, I understand.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense, right?
If you step into the kitchen, you got to be able to handle the heat.
Yeah, or the knives being thrown at you or something. But yeah, so a criticism that might come of this kind of like self-expression definition that I'm proposing, my self-expression document. No, sorry. It might be that it's a bit vacuous, like it doesn't really have like a big like meaning, right? Like it's not very obvious, the meaning. And I think that's the point. Like that's the benefit, not the downside. I believe players will always, like at large, players will define the spirit of EDH to be whatever they like to do. And I think this definition is at least being upfront about that instead of like trying to hide behind it. So like if we, the self-expression model, as I'm dubbing it now, is it's very, you understand like what it means, and it's not like trying to pretend to be something it's not. Yeah. So, and the one thing I don't like is when people use the spirit of the format as a tool in your arsenal to win an argument. I don't like that. Like letting players express themselves is core to the format as a whole. So I don't think it's like something you're going to use as a tool to like shame somebody or something like that. Telling someone that they're doing something against spirit of the format is really mean, and it carries a lot of weight. I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't like we were saying earlier, like ascribing moral value to like what somebody's doing within the game.
Yeah.
Now, if you know actively that I've played with people at some, like maybe back in Alexandria, where I did get the impression that part of what they enjoyed about doing some of the things they did was that it made people unhappy.
Yeah.
Then you can maybe like decide, oh, that person, they are maybe being kind of a bad person.
Yeah, but in general, you probably shouldn't like see someone playing a stax deck and saying, "Oh, you just hate fun," type thing. Like that's really like that, and you're like a bad person. Like that is like that's gonna like hurt players, I think, at like an emotional level, and they're not gonna want to play with you ever again.
Yeah, or like me playing the Purphoros deck, and like trying to knock this guy out, and I think one of the things he said to me was, hey man, like I only get to come to the shop, once a week or so to play Commander, so if I get knocked out of this game earlier and just have to like sit for a little bit, that really sucks for me. And like, yeah, I totally get that. That really does suck. I've been in that position before. But it's weird because like, what am I supposed to do in that situation? Am I supposed to
just let him win or whatever?
Yeah, am I supposed to put the winner of the game, like, am I supposed to throw the game a little bit for the sake of somebody's fun, like, and at the cost of my own fun?
It seems like a weird situation. Like it's not like it's like they're asking for too much. It kind of sounds like, right?
Yeah, I think something that everyone needs to understand is you're never gonna make everyone happy, and especially the rough part. If you don't have a regular play group, if you're just playing with strangers all the time, you're gonna get in this situation a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right then. Do you want to? We kind of put together. We looked at some videos of Commander content creators, and one thing that kind of seems to fit this theme is the Command Zone did a episode last year about the most fun commanders to play against, and I think the least fun to play against. So do you want to maybe like kind of look at some of the cards?
Yeah, they had done a most fun commanders to play against episode, and a couple years before that, I think it was 2017, they did the most hated commanders.
Yeah.
Back when DJ was co-hosting on there.
Yeah.
And so this isn't like going after them. This is more like, I think
we're using them as a view into the player base at large's opinions.
Yeah,
right?
And I think these opinions that they present in here are pretty ubiquitous. I think most people would agree with a lot of these.
Yeah,
these takes.
We're not saying like this is the Command's opinion and they're dumb. We're saying this is what I think. This is a good example of what actual Magic players think.
Yeah, so listed on their most fun commanders to play against, we're not necessarily going to list off every single commander on this list, but kind of the commonalities that a lot of them have.
Yeah.
So for the most part, it seems to be commanders that draw your opponent's cards or give them some kind of resource. So like you have like group hug ones, generally like Feldegriff.
Yeah.
Or Kaneos and Tiro,
Mm-hmm.
I think are a good example of that. But even aside from that, you've got like just ones that provide other kind of resource like Braids or Grathama.
Yeah.
Where they people to get more cards or get stuff into play earlier.
Yeah, and the thing with that is I personally I don't have fun when my opponents are playing group hug decks personally. They're a little bit, I mean it's just like a difference in like opinion, but like the point is like the spirit of the format is like kind of different for each player, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like personally, I think group hug decks or like decks that play like effects that make everyone draw additional cards kind of cheapens the value of my deck building, because I feel like one of the ways that I like to play is I like to build my deck in a way where I have just enough card advantage and stuff like that to outlast the other players. And if someone's like kind of throwing that out of whack. Like obviously they have their right to do so and stuff, but like it's it goes against my strategy, so obviously I'm not going to be a big fan of it, right?
Yeah, because I think we're both pretty similar in that we like to express ourselves mostly in our deck building
Mm-hmm.
and really like fine tuning a deck and trying to make it work as best as it can and works consistently
Yeah.
for the most part. Like I think we're both kind of on the train of like I don't think either of us really miss a lot of land drops.
No, I like hitting land drops. I don't need to have 10 cards in my hand. I just need to have enough cards in my hand where I spend all my mana, personally.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I don't need to have 3 good options, I just need to have 1 good option in my hand, I think.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this on some previous episodes where we both enjoy really just like curving out and like making a play a turn.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously hitting your land drops is really important for curving out.
Yeah, and while some players will have fun with like a Felder Grip type deck, I can definitely see other players, not having that much fun with that personally. Because when you have a group hug deck at the table, it makes for a different kind of game of Commander, and nothing is wrong inherently with that kind of game. It's just not what everyone's looking for at all times, right?
Yeah, and like people have said, you don't play Commander to win, but I would actually argue that games where nobody is invested in winning are worse than games where people are trying to win.
Yeah.
I've played games with people who they did not care about winning whatsoever, and when you have no investment in winning, you do stuff that like I think most people would agree that king making is bad in a game of Commander.
Yeah, and it can be cool for one player, but like other players end up feeling like really bad, especially if someone's just like trying to like throw the crown around like you said.
Or doing something like playing mass land destruction or playing a board wipe
For the memes.
And then just leaving. Just being like, I'll do this, I'll affect the game, and then I'll leave because it's not going to be my problem anymore.
Kill the lands, concede.
Because like I said about that guy saying he only had the 1 day a week to play. Well, I used to have that similar situation where I would go to the shop in Alexandria about once a week or every other week and just have a couple hours to play. And there was somebody there that played this mono white deck that would do stuff, really trolly stuff, not like mass land destruction generally, but like just a lot of board wipes and just drag the game out. And he admitted that he did not care about winning.
Yeah, and I think Commander players in general maybe this is not true, but I think a lot of players don't want their games to last 2 hours, right? They want like maybe a 45-minute game or something, right?
Yeah, it's a weird thing because I think it's a pretty even split, actually. I think there still are a decent amount of people that do like those long epic games.
Yeah, well, I don't assume to know that. I was just kind of giving my like perception, right?
Yeah, I don't think we've played against anybody who would enjoy that recently, and I know that we don't, certainly.
Well, I guess it also it depends on how fast you're playing, right? Because if you're hanging out with a table of friends, like you can be playing a lot slower, chatting about other stuff. So that's not what I mean when I say 2 hour long games, right? I mean 2 hour long games where everyone's like playing cards and talking about things like in the game. 20 turn games are a little bit. I think people generally want shorter games.
Oh my god, yeah,
not.
20 turn game. I can't. Oh man, we played a 20 turn game in a long time?
Probably, but I mean, sometimes we play games where it's like a normal because of some of the decks we play, it's like a normal size length game, but then it gets down to 2 players and we're just there's some removal coming back and forth and we can't finish it off.
I think we played that 2 hour game on Magic Online a while ago.
That was a fun game though.
But that's also that was a good game, but also Magic Online kind of stretches out the game length a little bit.
Yeah, because all the priority and stuff.
And so aside from group hug, there's also more combat centric, or random
or forcing, right? Like
they put Ruhan of the Fumori and Dantis the Warweaver.
One of them attacks a random opponent, right? And one of them makes all creatures attack, I think.
Yeah. So I guess that's more just involving bringing more action into the game and more combat necessarily. I think some people see that as fun. I've known people that don't like aggressive games particularly.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think the idea of randomness inherently is super fun. It can make for some fun situations, for sure. It's not it's necessarily bad, but I don't know if a commander that attacks a random opponent is always going to be more fun than just a normal Jeskai deck, right?
Yeah, I think anything that's somewhat random, people are just oh, it's random, it's wacky. Look how fun this is. It's I guess
sometimes, right? But not always, right? And then like it's not very. Maybe it's like this one I actually kind of agree with. It's from Archesa, and that's just because it like puts the Monarch in the game, and I think the Monarch is just kind of fun usually.
Oh
right?
yeah, Queen Marchesa. Getting the Monarch into a game, I think adds a lot of fun to it personally. It's like that thing like with Thantis or something where it drives action, but there's a resource attached to it, and it's different from these other like group hug type commanders where you're not just like giving somebody a resource.
You're trying to do something for yourself, right?
Like I have a Queen Marchesa deck, and one of the main goals in that deck is keep the Monarch. Like hold on to that, maintain it, and use it to get more card advantage off it.
Yeah, but do you have anything else to say about these these like most fun commanders? We kind of agree, but we also like I don't know, like we have a little bit different opinions, right? But I think a lot of people do agree with a lot of these, like that they want to play against like what is it? Not Ludovic. What's the
Well, generally, one thing that I wanted to
Ludovic.
mention is it seems to me like if most people agree these are the fun commanders to play against, what people really want is they want things that help them win the game or like help their strategy, or help them do their thing, to quote.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that was an interesting commonality between most of those commanders.
Yeah. So I guess I think like you said in 2018 or 20 whenever it was, they did an episode. Command Zone did an episode about unfun or what was it, most hated, right?
The most hated commanders.
Yeah. And you want to look at some of these, and I mean, and most of these are probably accurate, like in that like they're probably not the most fun things, but looking at them can give us some insight into some stuff.
Yeah,
right?
it seems to me like if we were like we kind of broke those into a couple different categories. It seems to me like these are kind of broken into either combo, control, or like some kind of stacks.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Like for example here, like you've got like some of the staxy commanders, like Grand Arbiter, right? Like obviously is people don't like playing against generally because like stop me from doing things. That makes sense. Or Derevi, right, is like almost always built as like a stack deck, right? At least in some sense.
Yeah, that's the common thought on Derevi is you use it with like Winter Orbs and stuff, but I don't know. I've only ever played against one Derevi deck.
Yeah,
all my time.
I think a Derevi deck without stacks is a perfectly reasonable deck, and not even that not that cringe as you might say.
Yeah, I mean personally, I found Derevi a little bit annoying with its like its ability
to untap land make
just
a bunch of mana, right?
Just the part where it's always 4 mana.
Oh, that part, yeah.
To play, like,
where if you get rid of it, you
just like really can't kill a Derevi.
But it is what it is. Like,
yeah, that's just my personal feelings on it.
Obviously, if you're playing Grand Arbiter, like people aren't going to like that so much. But I mean, there is something to be said about like it's not like it stops you like from interacting. Like you always have the option to kill Grand Arbiter. Like you can play in such a way that you're able to do that. But well, I guess it does cost a little more. But what the next category was like you said, like aggro type stuff, or stuff that like kind of like kills a player and they don't feel like they have a lot of interaction. Like for example, Scion of Ur-Dragon, because everyone, maybe you don't know actually, but like the Scion thing is you like play Scion of the Ur-Dragon and then you go to like attack someone and you activate him a couple times and deal 21 commander damage to someone by like getting the guy that like lets you pump him for Phyrexian mana and like making him unblockable or something. I don't remember exactly
something like that, or like doing a Prosh food chain combo.
Yeah, with Prosh. And those can be a little bit unfun because they like it feels like there's not many points of interaction, I guess, right?
Yeah, and then they also had like Atraxa is on here.
Yeah.
Which would typically you'd think be like Super Friends decks. And so to me, I think the thing that a lot of these have in common is they either do a lot on their own turns or like take long turns to like do a combo or like activate all their Planeswalker abilities, or they reduce the amount of things that their opponents can do on their turns. So what it seems to me like what people don't like is having less time to do their thing.
Yeah. And so it seemed like, I'm not gonna like speak for people, but I feel like people would say that some of these commanders are, against the spirit of the format. Like if someone plays a Narset deck, they might say that's against the spirit of the format because you're just trying to like attack with Narset and as hexproof and then take infinite turns, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And while that can be unfun, that is, a way of them expressing themselves to some extent, right?
Yeah, we're playing like Baral, Chief of Compliance,
and countering all the spells,
and like 20 counter spells in your deck. Yeah, most people wouldn't have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, and I don't blame them. And this is why it's a little bit hard in like a random setting, like playing at like a game store, because you don't really know what you're expecting, and you could very well build like a fair Narset deck, right? And you can't really convince people that it's fair, because I'm sure, Eli, you've played those games where someone's like, oh, I'm playing, this is my Prosh deck, but it's not a food chain deck, right? So don't worry. And then 6 turns later, you realize that, oh, it's actually like almost as bad, and like they actually like are doing all the broken stuff with Prosh, but they they use it as like a so it's, even if they did build a fair deck, it's hard for you to like believe them, right? Because it's like the commander has so much baggage with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then and if they did build a fair deck, but you still like have to like kill the commander, they might get a little bit salty. Like, come on, I told you this was like not even like a oppressive deck, and it's just kind of an unfortunate situation for everyone, right?
Yeah, especially with strangers, you can't know what kind of play group or what kind of setting they're coming from that might have inspired them to make the decisions with their decks that they have.
They could be playing in a like pretty powerful, like we play with some strong decks, right? And we make decks for those play groups, and in those play groups our decks are like not offensive, and probably not like the worst decks at the table. But if I were to bring that deck into another situation, it might be like really annoying for other players and actually like super oppressive.
Yeah, and I would make the decision in that instance, if I was playing with strangers, to select a different deck, but not everyone has a bunch of commander decks of varying power levels.
Yeah, or they might not even realize that, like, oh, I didn't even think that that like my deck would be super oppressive in this other situation, right?
Like, what if somebody started playing commander and they realized they were in a more competitive meta from the start, and they put a lot of their resources and they didn't have a lot of money into buying lots of different commander decks, and they went all in on that Baral counterspells deck just so they could have an impact in the games that they played.
Yeah.
Would you say that person's a bad person,
or they're like
for playing with
against the
you?
spirit of the format? I don't think
What if that's their only deck?
Yeah.
They just want to play.
Yeah, and you'll see this actually sort of thing on like if you go to like the REDH subreddit or something, you'll see these kind of posts where people are like, hey, I'm a new player, I'm thinking about building this stax deck, our player's gonna hate me for it, right?
Right.
And it's like, and you get varied responses. You probably should avoid that, or maybe just don't play the broken stuff, or like, or oh no, it's actually fine because like as long as you're playing with the right play group. And it's just really hard. I think it's hard for new players to approach that, right?
Yeah.
And it feels like they're kind of pushed away from certain strategies where I think you shouldn't like if a new player wants to build an aggro deck, I don't think they should be not shamed, but I don't think they should be pushed away from aggro deck because like some people might not have fun playing with aggro. Like we said earlier, some people are going to not have fun playing with any strategy they choose, right? Like if they play, like I said earlier, ladies looking to the left, someone might like hate women or something and not like that. But we probably wouldn't want to play with that person in general. But
yeah, like with the self-expression thing, and especially with stacks, like something that I've always enjoyed in Magic, and especially like within White and like even some Boros decks, I've enjoyed like hate bear effects, because to me like it's this cool. I've always been a fan of like shows like Supernatural, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and stuff, like this idea of like using like various like methods of like fighting against monsters and stuff.
yeah,
And that's kind of what playing like hate bears feels like to me. It's like using this this tool or like this magic or something to ward off like evil.
and when you're playing the Boros deck, the Sultai deck is the evil deck.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
In jest, of course, in jest. But yeah, and that can be very fun. I agree. So yeah, did you have anything else you wanted to mention about these most hated cards? Like, I guess just to mention a couple other ones, you have like Azami and Slivers. Personally, I'm kind of a anti-Sliver player, so that's my bias there. I don't like Slivers that much. What do you think about Slivers, Eli?
I haven't played against like a really good Slivers deck in a while.
And I don't really have a good reason to hate Slivers. I don't really hate them either, but like that's just where I realized that I fit into that mold of like everyone will have something they don't like, or there's someone that doesn't like everything, right?
Slivers are just the tribal deck.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like the paragon of all tribal decks.
Yeah,
It's like the most on rails, I think.
And I would still play with a Slivers deck, and I wouldn't tell them like that they're doing something that's like super cringe or against the format. But personally, I'm just not a big Slivers fan, right?
Spencer, we should build a Slivers deck where you just play the bad Slivers that give like effects that you don't care about.
Like
extra toughness and stuff like that.
That would be epic, but also not epic because I don't like slithers. Okay, but yeah, I guess to recap in general, right? Be nice to people. That's our main thing that I like to mention every episode. Don't shame people for their deck choices. Think about how people trying to express themselves in game and out of game, like deck building and play style, and don't use the Spirit of format as a way to shame people, like I said.
Yeah, just think, you wouldn't like somebody to to shame you for your deck choices or your play style. So don't do it to other people. Do on the golden rule. Do unto others.
Yes. So yeah, I apologize a little bit because this episode has been a little bit similar to our last episode because we're in a little bit of a funk of talking about Magic players right now. But I promise the next episode will be a little bit different, not treading similar ground. Probably we'll try to do something different.
I think we'll be back on to talking about cards and different colors and strategies and stuff again.
If you have a preference, maybe if you like the more Magic player talk, let us know. We'll try to get whatever in. I think one thing that we like to do is we'd like to have some nice variety so we can have a little bit for everyone.
Yeah, we wanted to try doing a couple like this just so we didn't have to read off so many cards, because when you're talking about something within the game and talk about cards necessarily, it's a lot of reading, and personally I find that a little bit monotonous.
Yeah, I'm known to go off on tangents often, but one thing that I always a little bit laugh at is when I see a Commander YouTube video and 60% of the video is reading the card and 20% is talking about the card, and it's like, well, I could read the card myself, but not that there's anything wrong with reading the card. It's just something that I think about.
Yeah, and we could do the thing where we don't read the card out, but I prefer, we do post images up with the card, but I prefer it to be
audio
accessible
only, right?
As audio only.
Yeah, because I listen to a lot of my podcasts on a podcast app instead of on YouTube if I have the choice. So yeah, I agree. So yeah, if you guys have any opinions on that, let us know. If you watch audio only or watch the video, I guess let us know. That'd be kind of a cool stat to know. Maybe you just have it off to the side, you don't look at it, or maybe you do read all the cards when we put them up. But yeah, that's probably about all we have.
Thanks for listening, and make sure to give us a follow. We've got our Twitter, and you can find us on YouTube, Spotify. Give us a like, a subscribe.
Do all those memes.
A dislike, I don't care. Just some kind of feedback.
Yeah.
So we're not just shouting into the abyss.
Yep. And if you have any opinions on topics you want to see, you can let us know. We'll put them on the list. And
we'll try and be more involved on Twitter, and we'll get more content back out coming in the next couple months.
Yep. And like we've said before, try to do 2 episodes every month. Maybe do the next bonus episode sometime. But that's about all we have, I think. This has been Spencer Cook and
I'm Elijah Samuelson. Thank you for listening.
Stay frosty. That's my catchphrase now.